Candidate Development Team for the Placement Exchange, and so we're really excited to have you all join us today for our first webinar, which is titled What to Expect from the Candidate Development Team this year. And so we have a lot of your questions that we got ahead of time and are excited to answer those for you today. One of the things that I wanted to just remind everybody of before we get started is that at the bottom of your GoToWebinar box, there is a questions button that's on there. And so if you have any questions about anything specifically throughout the presentation, just click on the questions box and type your question in, and we'll be keeping track of those as we go through, and we'll do our best to try to answer them at the end, or if there's something that's really pertinent and relevant right in that moment, we can answer it. If you have any other questions or anything like that afterward, we'll be showing some of our social media information where you can ask us questions on there, or you can always email us at candidates@theplacementexchange.org, and we will be sure to send that to you. Also, just a reminder is that when the webinar is complete today, we will also be posting it online so that anybody who couldn't attend today, you can go onto the YouTube channel and check it out so that you can make sure that you can share that information or see it again if you have any questions. So we'll just go ahead and get started and by introducing ourselves. So go ahead.
All right. Here we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Berenice Sanchez. I am part of the Candidate Development Team for 2017. This is my third year on the Placement Exchange Committee, and I'm excited to be working with candidates this year. Currently, in my institution, I'm a PhD student at Indiana University in Bloomington, and also work with the Student Life and Learning Office there doing some assessment for them.
Hi everyone, my name is Christopher Barnes. I am a Student Services Coordinator at the University of Wisconsin-Madison for a scholarship program called People. This is my second year on the committee, and so I'm excited as well to work with candidates and look forward to interacting with you all throughout the process and on-site.
And like I said, my name is Donald Walker, and I'm excited to work with the TPE Candidate Development Team this year as well. I'm an Assistant Director in Housing and Residence Life at Towson University, and this is my first year working with the TPE Committee. And so the first thing we wanted to do is just go over some of the outcomes and overview of what you can expect from us today. So you'll be able to articulate the purpose of TPE Candidate Development, and so we're going to focus in on what we can provide for you, identify some of the resources that we'll be able to provide throughout the year, and then specific things that you can participate in throughout the whole year so that TPE is more than just the on-site event. It's happening 365 days a year and how we can help out there. And so, again, the overview of our presentation today is that we'll talk about the purpose of TPE candidate development, resources including webinars, resume review, candidate orientations, boot camp, and the TPE on-site event preview. And then we'll have time for questions that you might have in the end. Oh, sorry.
All right, and the purpose specifically for the TPE candidate development, which is myself, Chris, and Donald, is we're really here to provide support throughout this entire process. So not just TPE on-site, but again, how Donald was saying, 365 days a year, anything that has to do with your job search experience and preparing you get a job and then get a transition and adjust it into the job. That's really what the Candidate Development Committee is here for. And then specifically for on-site in San Antonio next year, we are going to be working to provide insight, advice, and tips on how to fully take advantage of your TPE search. And so we will be doing, like Donald said, various webinars, blogs, different, providing different resources for you all to prepare. And then while you're on-site in San Antonio, during the placement exchange, we'll also be there present physically in the space to provide coaching and other materials and resources that you'll need while you're going through your interviews on site. So we'll pretty much be here for you virtually and through email leading up to on-site, physically there at on-site, and then again also accessible and available for you all after on-site if your job search and transition experiences as well.
So getting into some of the resources that we'll be providing this year, one of them, and since it's the first one that we have, are webinars throughout the academic or throughout the whole year to be able to talk to you about pertinent topics and things that we've seen that candidates in the past and some of the things that we think are important for you to be able to get as far as new information for your job search. And so there will be facilitation of these webinar topics online, and so just to kind of give you a general overview of some of the things that you can expect, and all of this stuff is listed on the Placement Exchange website, is that we'll start today with what to expect from the Candidate Development Team. We'll talk about resume structure next week. Then in November, we're going to talk about networking and also your resume content. After we talk through that, in December, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about navigating TPE on a fixed budget. And then early January, we'll talk about acing that phone and Skype interview. And so at that point, some of you may start getting first phone and Skype interviews from different schools and institutions, so we want to make sure that you're walking in and feeling prepared about that. Also in January, we're going to go in depth about TPE logistics and the whole process about the on-site event. Job searching for introverts will get us started in February, and also looking at researching institutions and how to find the best fit. Right in March, right before the TPE Onsite event, we have two pre-onsite events that we'll do in a webinar format. One of them is interviewing tips and tricks, and then the other one is just going to be an open forum for just general questions and answers that you have, and those will be back-to-back, so one on March 2nd and the other one on March 3rd. After TPE, the onsite event is over, we'll talk about on-campus interviews and how to get prepared for that. And then in April, we'll come back to you and talk a little bit more about the Fair Labor Standards Act. And so I'm sure that many of you have heard about that and the effects that it's having. And then we'll talk about preparing for the summer job search, what to expect in your first 90 days, then also understanding benefits. And so you can sign up for those webinars online on the TPE website. And then also you can always submit questions in advance through that registration process or through our email. And we'll be happy to try to make sure that the presentations are tailored to what those questions are.
All right, so now I will talk about the resume review process and what to expect from that. So the purpose of the resume review, this is something that we've done for a couple of years now, but the purpose is to provide you all with a chance to receive constructive feedback on your resume from a seasoned professional. And so that will come from a resume reviewer, and so many of our resume reviewers are former TPE candidates themselves and or current TPE employers, and so many of them have professional experience ranging from 2 years to 25 years. In regards to signing up for this great process, you'll need to register for this service. It is included within your registration fee for TPE as a whole, and so there is no additional charge for the service. Registration opens Monday, December 5th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and the last day that you can register / submit your resume for review is February 6th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So the registration process will take place with a registration form, and so within that form we will ask you a few questions. We'll ask you for your name, your current institution, the areas within student affairs you see yourself going into. We'll ask you to attach your resume through a Word document, and then we will finally ask you how would you like to receive feedback. And so I'll kind of go into that a little bit further when we talk about the timeline. So now that we are talking about the timeline, once you submit your resume, we'll match it with a resume reviewer. The resume reviewer will receive an email with your resume, and then you will be CC'd on that email for transparency. So one of the things that we are really trying to address is that gap in candidates not really knowing the next steps. So the moment you actually submit your registration form and your resume, you will get a kickback email saying thank you for submitting your resume. We will be in contact with you shortly with your resume reviewer. And then once we find someone who can review your resume for you, when we email that person, you will be CC'd, so that way you know who is giving you feedback, and you also have their contact information. The resume reviewer will have 2 weeks to review and provide feedback for your resume. And so as a committee, we will be charged with the task of making sure that your reviewer is providing you feedback within those 2 weeks. So that is something that we will be handling. So we would greatly appreciate it if you all did not reach out to them saying, hey, can you send me my resume soon, within those 2 weeks. Now, if the 2-week marker does come and they haven't provided you any feedback, then I would simply suggest sending them an email, but also get in contact with us, so that way we can follow up with them and see what's going on from our end. And if for some reason they cannot complete the feedback for you, then we can find someone else who can assist in that area. And then last but not least, when I was talking about how you would like to receive feedback, so we are providing candidates as well as resume reviewers an option of how they would like to provide feedback. So there is the formal process of completing a feedback form, which will have different categories ranging from grammar to structure of the format, or structure/format of the resume that the reviewer can fill in. And then once they complete that form, they can then send it to you by email. There is also a more informal process in which they can personally contact you by email or phone call, in which you all can set up a time to talk one-on-one, and they can pretty much just talk with you about, or talk you through the resume and the feedback that they provided for you on your resume. And so with that being said, I would like to go into the next resource that we have for you all, which will be the candidate newsletter. So the candidate newsletter is a new initiative to keep candidates well informed of TPE updates, deadlines, and special services. The newsletter will be sent to registered candidates monthly, beginning November 4th, which is a Friday. So they will be sent the first Friday of every month. The newsletter will include TPE Onsite reminders, links to TPE articles that are pertinent to the candidate job search, stories and testimonials highlighting the experiences of previous TPE candidates, but also an estimated monthly timeline for candidates in regards to important webinar dates and times, but also registration times, deadlines coming up for TPE Onsite, and other important events that we have planned for you all. And so if you have any questions about these two resources, the newsletter or the resume review process, please email us so we can get back to you promptly.
Another social media avenue that we're using to provide you more in-depth information is through our blogs. And so we will be sending out blogs for the most part weekly, sometimes every 2 weeks, but we're trying to make sure that every week you at least have some sort of form of information. So whether it be a blog, whether it be a webinar, whether it be a newsletter, but you're receiving something that's keeping you up to date in terms of what's going on with TPE, what can you be doing at that moment to prepare, and or just providing any other information that we feel may be useful for you as you prepare and are going through your job search. So your blogs, again, like the webinars, will range from different topics and themes that we'll have, and we try to make them very practical to where it'll be information that'll be very useful and tangible for you at that moment. And so we'll be starting with how to prepare a search calendar, what should that realistically look like, how can you piece it together, and then how can you tailor it to what your needs are. Other things like budgeting for life in transition. So we talk a lot about how to go. We have one where we talk about like going to TPE on a budget, but then we also want to, again, because TPE is not just about the job search, talking about what that transition looks like too. So how can you budget for that? How to research institutions, transitioning into new jobs. These are topics that we have picked from past questions and just conversations that we've had with candidates in the past of what information would be useful. Again, this is a service that's tailored for you all, and we want to make sure that the information that we're providing is information that you all want. And so this is also a place where if there's something that you are really needing information in or something like that, feel free to shoot us an email and say, hey, I need more information about this, and that could very well be turned into a future blog post, because most likely if one of you all has a question about something, there's probably 50 other candidates that also have a question about it. And so keep an eye out for these. We try to, like I said, we try to make them as practical and up-to-date as possible in terms of where you may be in your job search process, but they'll be coming out all year. Another thing that we have is candidate orientations. And those will start in November. So in November, what we're going to do is have a full-on candidate orientation, and it'll be a webinar where we'll have, we'll include a lot more of like what is the on-site going to look like. And so we'll provide pictures so you all can see what the interview hall looks like, what mailboxes look like. The layout of the placement exchange changes from year to year because the convention center, obviously, like their layout are a little different, but certain spaces will always look the same, and so we'll provide visuals for you all to see what those spaces look like during the orientation, and sort of talk through what the process is, like when you show up, what does the process look like when you're scheduling interviews and having to schedule a round 2, and that sort of thing. And so we'll do a full-on, very detailed candidate orientation, and again, we'll have that recorded and uploaded online in case you cannot make the one online candidate orientation. And then after that, if you see in the bottom under the important dates, we'll have candidate question hours, and we'll do those once a month, and those will be a lot more free-flowing of, we won't necessarily have an agenda for you all, but we'll be collecting questions from you all that you can post on Facebook or Twitter or any of the social media sites, and or just questions that we get emailed, and we'll just pretty much answer any questions that we have gotten in any of those spaces, and then also open up the floor for you all to ask questions. And so it'll be a good sort of touching point, and during as you're preparing for on-site, to just come in and ask any sort of questions that you may have about the process. And we'll also be having candidate orientations while you're on site. And so if if you're not able to make it to any of the candidate orientations before you get on site, don't stress out. We will also have candidate orientations continuing on while we're on site as well, and so we'll be available and make sure that you're prepped and ready to go for on-site, whether it be virtually beforehand or once you get to San Antonio.
One of the resources that we wanted to provide this year as well is some virtual coaching for candidates in a more informal way. We recognize that sometimes the questions that candidates have might not necessarily fit into one of the predisposed topics that we have. So we want to be able to provide some space, especially online, for people to be able to just ask quick questions or set up a meeting with a coach and have live different chat sessions, as we were just talking about. And so there will be more information coming out about virtual coaching in one of our newsletters, but one of the ways to be able to get in contact with us, and you'll see it at the end, is through our social media. So if you have a quick question about anything, you can just quickly ask on social media from us, and then we'll make sure that we respond to you or get you connected with a seasoned coach to be able to help to answer some of the questions, because we don't want you to go through this process at all feeling like you can't ask any question without getting a really solid answer. And so just feel free to always use virtual coaching or connecting with us through social media platforms as a way to just learn more information, especially if you don't feel like you know where to turn to for a specific answer. The next thing that we're going to talk about very briefly as well is about the TPE Onsite Bootcamp. And so if you haven't heard about the bootcamp before, this is a pre-onsite event that takes place in San Antonio the day prior to the TPE Onsite event starting. And so it's an exclusive event where we will have registration that will open shortly, where you can sign up to be able to attend 3 or 4 really intense sessions about specific areas to help you be successful at TPE. And so these focus sessions also will include a mock interview where you'll be able to sit down with a coach on site to be able to sharpen up those last few skills that you might need to be successful through the interview process. We also will hand select some expert presenters to be able to talk about things. And so some of the sessions that have included in the past were researching institutions and how to ask really good questions so that you kind of stand out as a candidate, how to use the Strengths Quest to really hone in on the things that you are good at as a candidate so that you can sell those to interviewers in a very different way. And then we also were able to look at the NASPA and ACPA competencies in the past to be able to relate those skill sets back to interview questions that you might be asked. And so every year we have hundreds of people who sign up for this event and are very excited to be able to get that last bit of information from some expert candidates or from expert panelists and presenters to be able to help you to succeed in that space. And so you'll be able to get more information about that that we will send out prior to the on-site event so that you can register for TPE Bootcamp.
All right, for on-site 2017 preview, so as you all know, the location for TPE 2017 is San Antonio, Texas, and we will be taking place in the Convention Center, which is newly remodeled and a really, really great space. You all will, I think, really enjoy it. The spaces that we have carved out for candidates are really great. We'll have a big workroom to be able to prep and sort of hang out before and after interviews. And so just a general overview, TPE will go from Wednesday to Sunday, and so registration does start in the afternoon. I know if you all are planning to get to San Antonio a little early, people are sort of just walking around and exploring the space, which is awesome. You'll see there will be a lot of signage, and I know that convention centers usually can be really massive and have multiple events going on at the same time, and so please be assured that there will be all kinds of messaging so that you know exactly where you're going, exactly where you need to be. We will also have volunteers making sure that all of the candidates are, you know, in the spaces that they need to be. Some of the areas that we'll go through and kind of show pictures of so you can get a better sense of what it's going to look like are things like interview tables and waiting areas, and what does that look like. We have specified areas for candidates to sit in to wait, you know, as you're waiting for interviewers to come in and grab you and take you to their interview table. One thing that you, as you're thinking about, you know, going through the placement exchange, one of the big things that takes up a lot of time is managing your mailboxes, and so you want to make sure that while you're on site, you each candidate gets assigned a mailbox, and so that's really one of your main modes of communication with employers is through your mailbox and then through your portal. And so once you all are registered, make sure that you go through and become very familiar with your candidate profile online, because you also can do a lot of communication with employers and things like that online. And so those are sort of your two modes of communication. Like I said, we do provide a candidate workroom, which was a big working space with a lot of tables, and I'll have computers, and we provide a lot of like minor supplies, so like paper clips and mints and things that you may need as you're prepping to go into an interview. So you will have that available for you during all of the working hours of TPE. And then we also provide a quiet room, and so if you're somebody who needs more of a quiet space to sort of regroup and refocus and read and study and do what you need to do, we also do provide those spaces for you. Leading up to once you start scheduling interviews, you definitely can begin scheduling interviews before on-site through your candidate profile, but we also do provide the services of, we do have volunteers that go in and can help you schedule interviews while you're on-site, and that usually is right next to the area where you register. And so if you're having any sort of issues with scheduling, just be assured that there are people there who will be helping you throughout all of on-site at TPE. Reminders to, just as you're planning, how are you planning to follow up with employers? Is that going to mean you're doing a thank you card? Are you, going to be more sustainable and do emails? So sort of planning that out as you're thinking about your time on site. Another thing that we do provide as a resource that we didn't mention while you're on site is we also do roundtable discussions, and so they're sort of similar to some of the webinars. We try to pull out topics that are very important and pertinent at that moment, and so we'll do a handful. We won't do a ton because we know that during the days of TPE, you all are busy either preparing for interviews or going on interviews, but we will provide some time for you all to have roundtable discussions. So last-minute preps, we always do have one roundtable that includes all of our partner associations so that you may have an opportunity to connect with them, if going in and working with one of the student affairs associations is something that you would be interested in, that would be a good opportunity to just kind of go in and learn more about some of these associations that are partners for the placement exchange. And then again, in addition to the virtual coaching that we do, one other thing that I know a lot of candidates really appreciate that we do on site is provide actual coaching while you're on site. And so all of the coaching will happen in the workroom, in the candidate workroom, and we are able to get volunteers, professionals who will volunteer their time and come, and we set up multiple tables in the workroom, and coaches will sit there and wait for candidates to come in and who have any sort of questions about anything from questions that they should ask, or trying to decide between what things are important for them when they're looking into institutions, or any sort of dilemma or question or concern that may come up while you're on site that you are wanting to touch base with somebody else to kind of get some advice and get some mentorship. We do provide that, and we try to make sure that we have coaches scheduled all day during all of the days of TPE. So those are just some of the general things, and we know that it's a lot, and so don't be overwhelmed. We know that we're throwing a lot of information at you, but again, we will be providing more detailed information in various forms and modes between now and on-site, but we just sort of wanted to give you all a general overview of sort of what to expect and what types of information you will be receiving from us leading up to on-site.
So as mentioned before, here's all of the contact information and ways that you can get in contact with us, including our email address, which is candidates@theplacementexchange.org. You can follow us on Twitter and always send questions that you might have to us on Twitter at TPE 2017. You can do Facebook. You can also use Instagram. And then we also ask that you use the hashtag TPE 2017 so that we can continue to best serve you all in the best way that we can. There were a lot of really good questions that were coming in, and hopefully I know that it looks like we answered all of the ones that were typed in before, but if anybody has a question or need us to follow up on anything that we previously talked about, please feel free to type it into the question box below. And we'll hang out for a couple minutes to see if there's anything that comes in specifically. So a question just came in about, are the hotels already blocked off for the on-site event? And the answer to that is yes. So when you go online to register for the TPE on-site event through the Placement Exchange website, you should be able to find the hotel information on there as well, so that you can have a direct link. And so sometimes there's specific conference prices, especially when you contact the hotel to be able to say, hey, I'm registering for the TPE on-site event, and I want to stay in your specific hotel. And so there's different conference rates that are listed that you should be able to reserve in advance. Okay.
Somebody asked, they're out of town for one of the webinars, and so whether they can view a recording of it after the fact. Yes, all of our webinars will be recorded, and so we'll make sure that we post all of the webinars online, and so they will all be accessible to you. We'll also try to, I know that we're sending out the newsletter once a month, so that we'll try to make sure to sort of keep it up to date in terms of webinars that have already passed, that have been recorded and uploaded, so you all can have access to all of the webinars all of the time leading up to on-site and even afterward as well.
The question about is boot camp on Tuesday or Wednesday? The boot camp will be on the Wednesday, so I think that's the 8th, but whatever that Wednesday date is that the 8th?
I believe so.
Okay.
Wednesday of official start of Placement Exchange. So boot camp will happen in the morning. It will happen the first half of the morning, and then once boot camp is over, then TPE officially starts. Our first year graduate students able to participate in TPE. If we may need more information, but I know that there's a handful of graduate programs that are only like 1-year programs, and so if that is your situation and your program is only 1 year, and so you're a first-year student but you're technically on the job market, yes, definitely you can participate in TPE. Most of the jobs that get posted do require master's degrees, and so if you're looking for a job but you still have another year left, you may want to sort of figure out whether TPE may be the best place for you in terms of searching for a job, and I only say this because I do know that a majority of the jobs do require a master's degree. But if you have like a special situation or further want to talk to us, feel free to shoot us an email at candidates@theplacementexchange.org.
It says, we mentioned having a Skype interview in January. Should we be applying for jobs before the on-site event, and how does the application process work? So the quick answer to that is that once employers start posting positions online, we encourage you to be able to look at those positions and start contacting employers online to say that you're interested in the position that they have. And so once you go on the TPE website, you can create a profile which would include all of your contact information and also your resume, cover letters, etc. And so you can start contacting employers once they start posting jobs that would be available, and they also say that they're going to TPE on site. It depends on the school in a lot of different ways as well on how they're going to be doing different interviews. Some schools do 100% of their interviews on site, and that's how they will run their whole process. Depending on other schools, some of them do first round interviews prior to the event, and then they'll do other interviews at the on-site event. It really just depends on the school, and so if there's a school that you're interested in, I would definitely encourage you to take the initiative to get in contact with them to see how they're going to be navigating the TPE on-site event, so that you can make sure that if you're qualified for their position and you're really interested, that they know that ahead of time so that they can be in contact with you on how that process works. And so I wish there's a better answer besides it depends on the school, but each school kind of runs their process a little bit differently.
And when will schools post their jobs? Institutions have already been purchasing posting space in tables, and so schools will now, registration is open, so schools are already posting their jobs, and they'll continue to be posting up to on-site and even on-site. So that's one thing that a lot of candidates don't realize, is that even while you're on-site, there still may be new jobs being posted, and so it would be kind of good to get in the habit now of, like, just periodically checking the job post, because that we will constantly have new job posts on there all the time.
Okay. I think I understand the question. It's asking, is there only housing jobs at the TPE on-site event, and what other jobs are available? And then is it only entry-level jobs for people who are coming out of graduate school? And so, no, there's not just housing jobs that are posted at the TPE on-site event. The jobs will vary across the board in all the different areas and disciplines in student affairs generally. And so if you go online and you look at the different positions that are being posted, you can filter and kind of search through the jobs based on what your interests are and also what your qualifications are. And so they vary across the board for everyone. I will say that majority of the jobs that are on at TPE on the on-site event are entry-level positions, but there are multiple positions that are posted across the board. And so I know in the past there's been a lot of mid-level positions that have been posted, even senior-level positions where people use the TPE on-site event to be able to get a good candidate pool for the positions that they're looking for.
Also, with the whether schools only hold up their mascot to get your attention, again, it depends on the school. Some schools go all out and have like stuffed animals of their mascots come in when they get candidates. Some have little signs for their schools or banners for their schools, but usually it is something like school related. So since you're sitting down, you don't necessarily know who's going to come and pick you up for the interview, but you do know what institution it is, and so it usually is something excuse me, related to their institution, so that you know, okay, that's, I'm looking for them, or they're looking for me.
We have another question on, do you recommend registering for TPE before solidifying your hotel and flight? I think it's all about personal preference. I would say to register for TPE before you reserve your flight and your hotel, just so that you specifically know. And so you also won't be able to get the conference pricing until you're registered for the event. And so again, it's all about your personal preference, but typically I think working with people in the past, they would register for the event and then do their hotel and flight afterward.
Mm-hmm. And again, a good number of jobs are from housing, but there are multiple functional areas that also include jobs within the placement exchange. And so if you're interested in Greek life or multicultural affairs or student activities or leadership or what else, student advising work, we do still get job postings from a multitude of functional areas, but I think it's also important to recognize that because of the nature of housing work, a bulk of our positions are housing, and because and our entry level, but we do get a wide range of functional areas if you're not too keen on looking into housing positions.
I scrolled all the way back to the top of the question list that I have here, and I see, when will schools post their jobs? Bernice, did you already answer that one?
Yep, I got that one.
Okay.
I don't know that we have a list. Somebody's asking about a list of institutions that attended last year. I don't know that we have that piece of information, but I do know that we had hundreds and hundreds of job postings. So, and we had all kinds of institution types. And so, you know, if you're interested in the small liberal arts or a mid-sized commuter school or a large public institution, or if you're interested in a certain geographic area or even a certain state, I mean, I think that the pool of institutions and the number of institutions that we get who are posting jobs and interviewing at the placement exchange is so vast that even if you have a very tailored search, you should be able to find an institution and or a position that you would be interested in pursuing.
So another question was, once we post our resume to the profile, can you take it down and edit it? The answer is yes. You can take down your resume, and then as it updates or things change, you can repost a new one as you please.
Mm-hmm. Another one, do we have to stay the full Wednesday through Sunday? Are there socials after each interview day? So first of all, no, you don't have to stay the full Wednesday through Sunday. I know for myself, when I participated in the placement exchange, I had class I think on Wednesday and Thursday, and so I didn't arrive at TPE until Friday. So I did Friday, Saturday, Sunday TPE, and so again, that really just depends on what your schedule is, what can you afford, when can you actually physically get there. So it's not a mandatory that you have to be there throughout the entire time. There are socials, yes, different institutions, and the socials are hosted through the institution. So the placement exchange doesn't do any socials, but several institutions will plan socials after some of the interview days, and usually those candidates will get invited personally to some of these socials, and it'll usually be, so you'll get invited to an institution social who you either have already interviewed with or are interviewing with in the next day, and it'll just be, you know, another opportunity for you all to get to know each other either before or after the social. But again, you should receive all of that, you know, communication either while you're at your interview, or, you know, an invitation would be sent in through your TPE mailbox.
So another question was, do community colleges also attend TPE? And the answer to that is yes, some community colleges do attend TPE, but I would also encourage you to take a look at the TPE website so that you can see that people are posting jobs, community colleges included, all year round. And so you don't necessarily need to limit yourself to just think that, and they'll check whether or not they're going to the on-site event or not. But a lot of times people are continually posting jobs on the TPE website so that you can access them and apply for them either through our website or through their website, depending on how things are set up, so that you can participate in that job search process all around.
Mm-hmm. We have another question. If I cannot attend TPE, what recommendations might you have? So I would say still look through some of the postings. I think still take advantage of the resources that we can provide to you in your job search, and so you'll still have access to blogs, and you can still see the webinars and take advantage of things like the virtual coaching and the question and Q&A hours. And so take advantage of the resources that we have. You know, I think it's all really good information that you can still use in your own job search, even if your job search doesn't include the placement exchange. And then it's also good just to realize that not all of the postings that are posted on the placement exchange actually interview on site. And so for me specifically, the first position that I had right out of grad school, I saw the position posted through the placement exchange, but they weren't actually interviewing on site. And so there are those situations where some jobs are posted, but they're not interviewing on site. And so like I said, still just take advantage of all of the resources that TPE provides you, because it's not necessarily just for on-site, but we want to make sure that we're supporting candidates whether they are on-site or not.
There was a question that was asked earlier about will most interviewers be from HR or from multiple functional areas? Again, that depends on the school. So some schools have their HR representatives from human resources do interviews. Others will have specific search teams that might have a variety of people from around the university on their search team. And some will be exclusively from people that you would be working with, or direct supervisors from specific departments. And so it really just depends on the school and how they have things set up on who will actually be interviewing you, whether you're on site or doing an interview any other time of the year.
I think we've caught up with questions. If anybody else has last-minute questions, feel free to jot them down, shoot us an email, drop it in one of the social media sites. But we'll keep on. This is what we're here for. So even if you have a random question on a Tuesday, you know, feel free to shoot it through Twitter, send us an email, drop by the Facebook page. We'll try to keep as up to date as possible on all of the sites and making sure that we're keeping up with all of y'all's questions.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any more questions, I saw somebody typing there for a moment, and so I'll wait one moment to see if something comes through. There it is. Well, I think the question that popped up was, what interests you in the roles that we are in or in student affairs? I think in general for me, I work in housing and residence life, and I've been in housing and residence life for the duration of my career. I really like the impact that I'm able to have on the resident experience and how that impacts college altogether. Because when I think about how much time students spend in class and eating and doing everything else, majority of their time, in my experience, has been that they spend a good amount of time in their residence halls as well. And so being able to impact the co-curricular learning that they're having and linking some of the really cool things they're talking about in class with their experiences living on campus has been something that's been really motivating for me. And so I also have some other specific goals that I have with reaching out to minority students, et cetera, and helping them to be able to succeed in the space of higher education. So that's one of the big pieces that interests me and keeps me really engaged and going.
Yeah, I think for me, I wasn't a traditional student affairs professional, so I didn't go through a student affairs master's program. My master's program was in public administration, and I think similar to Donald, I think that I really enjoyed all of the work that I did was with students, even though I wasn't necessarily studying to go into student affairs. And so for me, when I was on the job market and looking for roles within student affairs, it was definitely about what were my transferable skills and how could I use the skills that I had to continue to support students and making sure that they were successful, that they felt supported, that they felt like they belonged on campus, and were having a good overall holistic experience at their institutions.
You're welcome, Richard. All right, something else just popped in.
For boot camp and essay fitness. So in the past, those sessions, which always happen very, very early in the mornings, are not actually run by the placement exchange, but in the past we've had volunteers from the NASPA side, who's one of our partner associations. These are some of the sessions that they have running during the NASPA conference, and we've been lucky enough to have the volunteers who run those sessions also come in early and run those sessions for the placement exchange for those candidates who may use fitness as one of their de-stressors, or that's just how you like to start your morning early in the morning. And so we're hoping to still be able to provide those for you. Again, it's dependent on volunteers. And then in terms of tips of what to do in your free time, we do, as part of the Placement Exchange Committee, we have a local arrangement subcommittee, and so they will be compiling information for you all about, what there is to do around San Antonio, also things like, where key stores are. So if you, like a Target and H&M, like if you need, something happened to your skirt or your pair of slacks and you need an extra change of clothes really quick, so we try to provide you with, like, okay, here are some of the local stores, or like the CVS if you need I don't know, aspirin or medicine if you're falling ill or something like that. And so we do try to provide you with as much information about the surrounding areas and places that may be helpful and useful for you while you're on site. So you'll be getting some of that information when we get a little closer to on site, but definitely keep an eye out, because we'll make sure that if there's other things available for you, while you're not interviewing, or in cases of emergency, we do try to provide with you as much of that information as possible.
Something else just came in.
Now, best advice on what you could be doing now. I think for sure working on your resume and working on your cover letter, and working on different versions of those. And so I think that, being intentional about what should your resume and cover letter look like if you're applying for a housing position versus a multicultural affairs position versus a campus activities position. And so thinking about that, and sort of what are your experiences in those different areas are. And then also, I think for me, my piece of advice would be to start looking at institutions and start looking at the positions that they're posting, and start figuring out for you, like, what things are very important for you in your search and what things may not be very important for you. So if ending up in California or being in California is very important for you, like figuring that out now, because I think that it'll make your search a little less overwhelming. If you start really making sure that you know either what type of position, what type of experience you want, where you want to be, what type of institution you want to be at, it'll make your search a little less overwhelming.
Yeah. Another question that came in was, is there a way to let potential employers know what days you'll be present at TPE? And yes, there is. So when you go in and you register for the on-site event, you'll be able to go in and manage your schedule. And so you can make specific days and times available and unavailable, so that as employers are attempting to schedule with you and you're scheduling with employers, you'll be able to block off times that you're unavailable, which can also include a whole day if you're not available. The other thing that I could also encourage you to do is that once you get to that point to where you're trying to schedule an on-site interview, you can always email the employer ahead of time to say, hey, I'm either going to be available this day or I'm going to be unavailable on a specific day, and they should be able to help and work with you on finding a time that would fit both of your schedules pretty well. All right. Is there anything else out there? We're happy to answer any questions you might have. Well, if there is nothing else at all, we are, like we said, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Please feel free to contact us using any of the contact information that's up on the slides. And we'll definitely be in contact with you so that you know what you might have. If there's any other questions that come in, we'll be sure to answer them through the text mode on here, so that we'll just get it back to you. And so as we wrap up here, I just wanted to make sure that we showed some different ways to join us next time on our different webinars. And so next Thursday at 2 p.m., Thursday, October 20th, we'll be talking about resume structure. And then the next week, we'll be talking about networking on Thursday, November 3rd. And then on Wednesday, November 16th, we'll be talking specifically about resume content. And so the big difference between resume structure is we're going to be talking about what that looks like and what how you can guide the eye and what your piece of paper could physically look like. And then in the content one, we'll be addressing how to specifically write certain things, sell specific skills, etc. So if you have any questions about that, we'll have some great presenters up there to help you out. So with that, we definitely hope that you have a really great day and get in contact with us if you need anything at all.
Yes, thanks for joining us, everybody.